We all know that Gen 1 Pokemon is seriously flawed, but one of the biggest contributing problems that rarely gets discussed are the moves themselves. Hey, I'm making my own Pokemon Yellow ROM hack, and today we're discussing the problem with Gen 1 moves, what I've done to fix them so far, and we'll finish with some spicier ideas that are still being ironed out. So to put it very simply, good moves are the prerequisite condition for a type in general to be good. We all know that types in Gen 1 are notoriously unbalanced, with Psychic, Water, and Normal absolutely dominating. Now, before you get to offensive and defensive capabilities or stats, a Pokemon is not going to be able to utilize any of that if there are no good moves to begin with. The reason why Bug and Ghost type are so bad in Gen 1 is largely due to the quantity and quality of types of moves that exist themselves. Outside of Confuse Ray and Nightshade, the only damaging moves for Ghost is Lick. Now, Gengar has a really good learn set and stats, so it's able to make up for this. But this doesn't mean that Ghost type is good. It just simply means that Gengar is good, despite having this massive disadvantage. Now, this is a strong example, but there are many more lacking types than just Ghost. Bug has 3 damaging moves, all of which are awful. Ground first seems good with 4 powerful damaging moves until you realize that 2 are exclusively on the Cubone line. And then, since Dig and Earthquake both have 100 base power, it makes distributing an early game stab move to a ground type impossible. Poison is the most abundant Pokemon type in the game, yet its strongest move is 65 base power Sludge. Rock has only 2 moves, and of which Rock Throw has 65% accuracy. Given fighting moves' weak and inaccurate lineup, it's odd that they also have a tendency to inflict recoil. Outside of Razor Leaf's crit mechanic, grass moves are just terrible. And then best of all, there's Dragon, whose only move in the game is Dragon Rage. Now, moving into Pokemon Yellow Legacy, we'll start off by looking at moves that are getting type changes, move on to general balance fixes for each type, and then finish with some of the more spicy concepts we're still working on. To begin, Gust was originally a normal type move, and we've changed it to flying. Karate Chop as normal type was another oddity in Gen 1, and we've turned it into a fighting type move. With its near guaranteed chance to crit, this is now going to be a really strong move and should do a lot for fighting types like Mankey. And lastly, Cut is going to move to Bug type, just like in Crystal Legacy. Now, given Gen 1 crit mechanics, we can't make it so Cut is a high crit move, as it would just be way too overpowered. It's also worth mentioning that every status move that was not normal, such as Agility, Meditate, Amnesia, Rest, and so on, have been made normal. And this is actually just a simple technique to account for Gen 1's smart AI. This will make it so you won't get weird oddities like Lance spamming Agility against a Venusaur because he thinks Psychic's Agility is super effective. Now, I should mention that we are still open to move type changes, but you should look at it as a last resort. It's a very drastic option that severely changes the fundamentals of the game, so it's not something you want to be throwing out all the time. I will finish this video though with some ideas about other moves that I'm considering changing. We're now going to look at move fixes, starting with the normal type. Just like in Crystal Legacy, we're moving Tackle from 95 to 100% accuracy. Slam's accuracy will be boosted from 75 to 85. Now, despite being fairly strong, Takedown is a move that always felt quite underwhelming. It's only slightly stronger than Strength, has a chance to miss, and does recoil damage. Versus something like, just say, Surf, it's really bad. So we've upped its accuracy from 85% up to 100, and we're buffing Double Edge from 100 to 120 base power. Now at 40 base power, Meowth's signature move Payday is really bad, so we've buffed it to 60. Just like in Crystal Legacy, Glare is going from 75 to 90% accuracy, and Supersonic is going from 55 to 70. Constrict, which is not a trapping move, is going from 10 to 40 base power and keeping its 33% chance to lower speed. And since we're on the topic of normal, I should also mention that Hyper Beam in Gen 1 works so that if you kill a Pokemon with it, you don't have to recharge. That's really cool. And it's, of course, staying in the game. Now, moving to Bug type, these changes are going to look very similar to Crystal Legacy. Leech Life is getting buffed all the way to 50 base power. Bug type Cut will be 55 base power with 100% accuracy. Twin Needle is going from 25 times 2 to 40 for 80 total. And this is going to be your late game bug move for Pokemon like Scyther and Pinsir. There's also Pin Missile, which will be added to a few other bug types, and this is going to have 20 base power with 100% accuracy. As for Ghost, we're still in a very weird spot. I think pretty much set in stone at this point. Lick is going to be buffed from 20 to 40 base power. But this is where it gets tricky, and this is where I'm still uncertain. I've currently moved Nightshade so that it is a ghost normally damaging move with 80 base power. The idea behind this comes from the fact that Gen 2 Ghost is able to get by on really nothing but Shadow Ball, so we've upped the power, and we're also going to switch Ghost to now deal special damage. One thing we also considered was making Bite a 60 base power Ghost move, and the idea behind this is that it's actually meant to be a Dark type move. It damages Ghosts and Psychics for super effective damage, so the people in the world just assume that it's a Ghost type because Dark hasn't been discovered yet. It's cool, but there's just something really weird about seeing Bite as a Ghost move, so I've decided to scrap that idea for now. I also know a lot of people really like Gen 1 Nightshade mechanics, so it's a very tough call, but this is where we are right now. Now for ground type, we've made Bone Club 100% accurate, and the current build has Dig from 100 base power down to 70. A lot of people really like this because getting Dig right after the second gym is just like insanely strong, but the reality is if you're going to leave it as such, you're not going to be able to put it on any ground types in the early game, and then every ground type just doesn't have a ground move. Now moving into poison type, I think we've done a pretty smart workaround. Poison Sting originally did 15 base power, and we've moved it up to 35 to essentially become Acid. Acid was a 40 base power move, and we've bumped it up to 65 to mimic Sludge. And Sludge is now going to go to 90 base power to replace the absence of Sludge Bomb. Smog is also 40 base power, but with 80% accuracy and a higher chance to poison. We've also moved Poison Powder from 75 to 85% accuracy, since poison is just not as good of a status as sleep or paralysis. Rocks are getting a very simple change. Rock Throw is going from 65 to 100% accuracy, while Rock Slide is going to 95% accuracy with a 10% chance to flinch. Now, as for fighting, Rolling Kick was a move in a very weird spot. Kind of served as like a later game kicking move, but it had the same base power as the early game kicking move Double Kick. It was basically balanced so that it had a 15% chance to miss, but a 10% chance to flinch. Most players would agree that the inconsistency makes it worse, so we boosted it to 70 power and 100% accuracy. Like in Crystal Legacy, Jump Kick is moving from 70 to 80 base power, while High Jump Kick is going from 85 to 100. And Submission is also moving from 80 to 100% accuracy. There's no reason that a move with recoil should also miss. Oh, and Low Kick also had a chance to miss in this game, so we've moved it from 90 to 100%. Now, from here, we're going to look at the elemental types. And I first want to talk about water. And that's because water is the best example of a type in a great spot. And that's because it's got easily applicable moves for all levels of power, and this allows for smooth scaling throughout a playthrough. There's 20 base power Bubble for the very start of a game. It's followed by Water Gun at 40, which serves as a general early game move that makes sense for pretty much any water type. Bubble Beam at 65 is next, providing a significant yet not drastic jump in power. There's Waterfall at 80 power, and then of course you have Surf with 95 power. Lastly, and this tends to be more so for the bosses, you have Hydro Pump at 120. And this is a great set of moves that not only scale through the game, but also are very ambiguous so that like it makes sense for pretty much any water type to learn it. Now let's compare that to Fire type, which is representative of the other elementals. The game starts out with 40 Ember as the only early move option. From here, the next strongest move is Fire Punch at 75 power. Now, if this move was called Fire Spin, it would still be a problem because it's a 35 jump in power is quite a bit, but because it's called Fire Punch, you can only give this to Pokemon who have hands. And so what this basically means is Ponyta, Vulpix, and Growlithe just don't have a mid-power move. Because the next move up is Flamethrower at 95, and that's not something that you can just give out super early. So this puts us in a very tricky spot, but what I've decided to do is make it so that Fire Punch is 70. We'll give it to Magmar and Hitmonchan a little bit earlier, and then we're also going to have Charmeleon learn it so that it gets a mid-power fire move. To balance improved availability, we'll take it down from 75 to 70 power, and I think that should put fire moves in at least a slightly better spot. Now, electric moves are in a very similar spot. You can't give Magnemite or Voltorb Thunder Punch, but you can throw it on something like Pikachu and Raichu. From 75 to 70 base power, middle power move, it's basically going to act as Gen 1 Spark. The only other thing we can do for electric is consider buffing Thunder. Blizzard is 90% accurate in this game, and Thunder is 70, but Paralysis is worse than Freeze, and Rain and Hail doesn't exist. It's a bit of a mess. Now for Ice type, we've moved Blizzard from 90 down to 85 accuracy, and that basically puts it on par with Fire Blast, except Freeze is absolutely busted. Ice, fortunately, does have Aurora Beam, which can serve the same function as Bubble Beam. Now, as for the last elemental type, we've got Grass, which is always a little bit different from the other 4. To begin, we're going to put Vine Whip on par with Ember and Water Gun, moving it to 40 base power, and then Absorb's base power will move from 20 to 30. Mega Drain is going to become Pseudo Giga Drain and move from 40 to 65 base power, and then Petal Dance will be 70 to 90. Now with Crit, Razor Leaf does 110, so it's Gen 1, don't look at me. The other thing we've actually implemented is 180 base power Solar Beam. A move that takes 2 turns to set up while you can get hit is effectively halved in damage. So that would make Solar Beam effectively 90 base power, but worse. Now, as mentioned, Gust is moving over to Flying type, and Gen 1 Wing Attack is a 35 base power move, and we're gonna move that to 60, because now with 85 Drill Peck, you've got your strong flying move. And then just like in Crystal Legacy, Sky Attack is going to become Flying type's Fire Blast, but with no added effect. Now, multi-hit moves in general are being buffed. Pretty much everything is going to 20 base power with 100% accuracy. Okay, so multi-hit moves are already bad because there's a dice roll to see whether you're gonna land 2 or 5 hits. You have a 12.5% chance to land 5 hits, so in this case, 100 base power. And 75% of the time, you're doing 40 or 60, which is really not that good. So you're taking a very bad risk there. There shouldn't be an additional risk for this move to even hit in the first place. Multi-hit moves are terrible, and you're still probably not going to use them, but now they're not terrible. Trapping moves are also an interesting thing in Gen 1. When you're trapped, you can attack back, and it can be really overpowered. We thought about nerfing them, but in the end, what we've decided to do is just treat them like the strong move that they are. You wouldn't give Blue's starter EV Hyper Beam, right? That's just too strong. So you don't give early Pokemon trapping moves because they're that strong. Personally, I think it's an interesting mechanic of Gen 1, and it is a noteworthy mechanic of Gen 1, so it's staying in, but we're doing our best to balance it. Also in Gen 1, you cannot attack on the turn that you wake up from sleep, so it kind of similar thing going on where you can just auto die. So we're experimenting with making sleep a much later game status move. So anyway, now it's time to talk about some other fun, crazy, wacky ideas we're considering. So because Dragonite is the only good dragon in Gen 1, we don't need a ton of strong dragon moves. Really, like 1 would do, and we're thinking about maybe making Slam Dragon, especially if we're making Ghost do special damage. It would make sense to maybe bring Dragon over and be physical, then Slam on Dragonite's attack. That would be pretty cool. Also, if Slam becomes Dragon, we would make it 100% accurate. Since there is no early ground move, we're also thinking about maybe making Sand Attack Gen 1 Mud Slap. Same for maybe Kinesis as a Psychic type Mud Slap. And then seeing as Razor Leaf is basically 110 base power move, people are suggesting we make Egg Bomb, which is 100 base power, a grass move, and it be Exeggutor's signature move. I've seen a million suggestions for what to do with Razor Wind, and I just don't really love any of them, but I'm open to hear more. And then we're thinking about messing with Brock's TM Bide. Bide is basically Brock's auto lose condition, but we were wondering, like, what if you made it so that when you use Bide, your defense and special raised? Would that be too overpowered? I don't know. It could kind of function similarly to Skull Bash, which in this generation I don't even think raises defense on the first turn. Gen 1's weird, man. Anyway, hope that gives you a good idea of where we're starting with Pokemon Yellow Legacy. Make sure to subscribe for future updates, and I will see you again soon. Peace.